Hi everybody, this is Hero from the Birds back with another Shadowlands video. And in this video I'd like to walk you through some testing that I've been doing from the Venthyr perspective of Paladin on a heavy mastery build. This build essentially eschews haste and gets rid of as much of it as we possibly can in favor of a lot of mastery. We don't mind crit also in this build, but I think I've been chatting a little bit and just doing a bit of research in the last little while about the value of mastery for low haste builds. Now, before I talk about what's going on here and the gameplay that I'm looking to incorporate, we're here just testing an LFR because I'll be honest with you guys, LFR is one of the best places to test new builds since people screw up all kinds of mechanics and take a lot of damage. It gives you a chance to look at kind of more raw throughput numbers and, respond to mistakes that you might not usually be assessing in your regular mythic or heroic raid content. So I like it as a platform for reviewing and testing out different things. It's also something you can just hop into easily through the group finder and pick up a build and test it out. So that's why I do it. In general, I try to bring my more evaluative or analysis videos of content when I'm looking at my own raid stuff on our farm progress or something like that. In any case, why would we want to head toward mastery and away from haste? What would make us want to do that? Well, the traditional logic on Holy Paladin has largely been haste-oriented because it has been centered on the Glimmer of Light build. And the Glimmer of Light build takes advantage of an interesting interaction between Crusader's Might's talent and the cooldowns of both Holy Shock and Crusader's Might. Effectively, it doubles the effectiveness of haste because you get the opportunity to cool down your Holy Shock faster by pressing Crusader Strike, and you also lower your global GCD so that you can Crusader Strike much more quickly. So you get Crusader Strikes back quicker naturally due to high haste, you get Holy Shocks back quicker naturally due to high haste, and then the mechanic of the talent also improves the CDR on Crusader, on Holy Shock. This is huge, it's awesome, and it's one of those things that we often want to celebrate as Holy Paladins. When you have a lot of haste, you can really power out a lot of Holy Shocks. That plays into our Shock Barrier, Legendary, that plays into the Glimmer of Light build, so on and so forth. And in these builds, actually, Mastery is not a bad stat for a raid setting. Generally speaking, all of our Glimmer of Light builds have focused on haste and versatility. When you're doing general gearing, meaning that versatility is okay for raids, it's really strong for Mythic Plus due to the way in which personal damage reduction becomes important as you push high keys. The basic idea being, if you can't sustain like a level 20 key because things one-shot you, you need to find some way to passively buff your character. Avoidance and versatility are the only way to actually naturally impact that through gearing. So versatility has been a pretty good stat for the Glimmer of Light build in general. Those are all-purpose approaches, although, as I mentioned, Glimmer of Light really doesn't mind a little bit of mastery. But what about the difficulty or the high GCD intensive requirements of playing a Glimmer of Light build? Specifically, the fact that you have to just be smashing your keyboard basically the whole time, and though it can be a throughput monster, but it also requires a lot of attention. That is a challenge that a lot of people have been finding they want to move away from. The kind of ultra spammy, smash the keyboard type of gameplay that they're not a huge fan of and they're looking for alternatives for. Well, this movement away from haste and toward mastery, favoring crit and versatility as your second and third options, really plays toward that style. And the way it does so actually is by leveraging the Inflorescence Legendary. And that Legendary obviously is going to boost the effectiveness of our Holy Lights when cast with Infusion. So I was doing some testing in the background, and at about 200 eye level, you're looking at something like 20 to 25k crits on your Holy Light. This is exceptional, and it of course transfers a lot and makes our Resplendent Light Conduit that much more effective if we're making use of it as well. One thing that's really curious about it is it's a very stabilizing ability when you cast it on the tanks in a raid with Beacon of Faith. So you're going to transfer 35% of the healing from Holy Light onto the other tank while topping off the first one. It's interesting on Altamar, when one of the tanks pulls away for the second mob, you can take advantage of this by standing right on top of the mob that's on Altamar, or you can chase over and hit the dog if you'd like. And then you can just pump that one tank beside you full of heals, and it will top off the other tank. This is pretty useful in a raid that is very CD oriented, meaning there's big burst windows where you want lots of CDs stacked together, either DR or throughput, and then otherwise there's not a lot of fights that have significant amounts of rot. There's some spot healing fights where you have, for example, on Ultimar and Mythic, where you have big bleeds going out, that kind of thing, but a lot of it is the kind of thing you want to mitigate through damage. If you think about something like Sludge Fist as a fight, both tanks getting completely smashed, casting Holy Lights into one of the tanks with a Beacon of Faith up is going to be really a productive use of your Holy Light cast. Not only do you do a ton of throughput, as you can see here with the Holy Light breakdown, but you also transfer a lot through Beacon, and you build Holy Power. So you can effectively do this strategy by casting most of your Holy Lights, especially your infusion ones, on the tanks alone. And you can see here, we're pumping out about 4.6 to 5k HPS and 200 eye level gear at about 44 or 45% mastery. One of the things I like about it is it's a really relaxed approach, guys. You can put it together with Venthyr. If you wanted to really game the system, what we're looking to do is get high uptime on wings, so Divine Purpose Awakening. This would be great for Necrolord, for example, because you can guarantee a far larger number of occurrences of your spenders, which will then potentially produce Awakening casts. These are things that I'm thinking about in general for this kind of a build. So the approach is simple. It's not so demanding on your GCD usage, because your GCD is going to be much slower. You're still building Holy Power by casting on your tanks, and you can just spot heal or Light of Dawn as you will without any significant downside. It's an intriguing build, and I wanted to bring it to your attention largely because I think people need some options for seeing what kind of throughput that they can produce, what kind of role that they can fill outside of playing a Glimmer build. And one of the things that makes me interested in this is that the amount of mastery you get from stats on gear is much higher in terms of the scaling relative to the amount of crit you get, the amount of haste you get, and the amount of versatility. So it's almost 2 to 1 compared to versatility, for example. 750 rating of mastery is something like 45%, but for versatility it's something like 20, 22, 23. This means that for those of you who just got really awkward pieces and you've just got a crap load of mastery on your gear and you're like, man, I can never get enough haste to do Glimmer effectively, or it just feels so sloppy or slow, you can think about doing an Inflorescence build where you just leverage all that mastery. You have a lot of stacked encounters in this game outside of like Sun King. There's not very many major fights that don't have all of the groups stacked together as often as possible. And then, we didn't even feature it in this run, but you can make use of things like Rule of Law. The beauty of this is you can basically stack yourself right beside a tank and be confident that 50% of your Holy Light cast will go into that tank, guaranteeing that that mastery transfer is significant. But also, mastery really benefits all of the Light of Dawn casts that you're doing into melee, whether you have a ranged group to the back or not. You're guaranteed to hit yourself, and if you have a couple of melee plus the tanks, you're guaranteed to make almost full use of that mastery all the time. In addition to that, Ashen Hallow, if you're playing Venthyr, offers just a lot of passive damage. It offers you another button to press to generate Holy Power. It gives your wings that much more oomph when you're in wings because of just the amount of crit and extra healing you're getting from those interactions. So lots going for this build. If you're looking for something a little bit slower, it's kind of the ranged build of Holy Paladin, essentially, because even though you're in melee, you're really looking to just cast on the tank. And although I've kind of mentioned it briefly in other encounters, I wanted to show you just a straight up, as much mastery as I could toss in my gear reasonably, that kind of a build to see if you guys would be interested in seeing it. You can check out the gameplay of it, and you can note just how effective it can be, especially at sustaining tanks that are apart from one another, or tanks in general. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we will catch you again next time.